Good morning, everyone, at least good morning from the West Coast. Welcome to today's Mirror of Intimacy webinar. I'm Dr. Alexandra Katehakis, and today is Monday, December 4th. And our topic today is giving, which is appropriate for the season. So just a few things before we start as usual. I want to remind you to type your questions in the Q&A box, and I'll answer them as we go along, and also to leave us your book reviews on our Amazon page when you get a moment for Mirror of Intimacy. Let us know what you love about the book, how you use the book, or anything that may be unique or interesting or fun about what the book has brought into your life. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our channel by clicking or checking the subscribe button below so you'll never miss a post. You can also keep up with what we're doing by following me on Instagram at Alex Katehakis or at Center for Healthy Sex. So a reminder also, just a double reminder to please use the Q&A box, not the chat box, for your questions, and I'll answer them as best I can. The quote today is from Alan Cohen. He writes, "The door you open to give love is the very one through which love arrives." And that is such a sweet and simple poetic statement about giving and receiving love. And so love comes to us when we are open-hearted. So the door you open to give love is the very one through which love arrives. And it's a two-way street, love. We've heard that a million times before. And so ask yourself how you make love a two-way street for you, literally when you're making love, and also when you are inviting love into your life, especially during this season of giving and receiving. We've all known someone who is always giving gifts or doing favors for people or desperately anticipating everyone's needs. In fact, you might have been that person at some point in your life, especially if you came from a family that was difficult or dysfunctional, and you learned that you had to caretake to everyone else's needs around you in order to get what you needed. And what you needed might have been something as simple as feeling safe, feeling like you mattered, especially if the household were more unsafe emotionally for you. So this first statement that I've made really begs the question of, out of what energy are you giving gifts or favors, or anticipating someone's needs? You know, if you're walking through a door in a public space and there is an elderly person or an infirm person, maybe somebody's on crutches, so they're infirm that way, and they're approaching opening a door, well, anticipating their need in that moment is an act of giving. It's an act of kindness. It's an act of being a good Samaritan, because it doesn't really cost you anything. You are able-bodied in that moment and you can help. So that anticipating needs in that way is perfectly fine and healthy and useful to society. But when you're anticipating people's needs to the relinquishment of your own, that's when it becomes problematic. And many people get a reward from overgiving. It can have them looking like they are very loving and they're very caring. Also, it's where they garner all their self-esteem and their self-worth, is that if I give, then people think I'm amazing. But there's a downside to that kind of overgiving also. So people who overgive are really trying to control everyone around them because, as I said, they grew up in an out-of-control environment in their childhood. And they want to control everybody around them. They want to make sure everybody's in their place and they know what's going on so they feel safe. Compulsive giving, when it's done out of a fear of abandonment or out of a fear of not being safe, keeps people, or its aim is to keep people obligated to us. And it ends up giving us a false sense of power because people aren't really caring about us or coming towards us because they get to give. It's because they're taking all the time. And that taking all the time can be incredibly depleting. And that's a form of conditional giving. And that conditional giving can feed the ego with all sorts of distorted messages that we're special, that we're important, that everybody loves us, when in fact, this kind of giving can be exhausting, and it can be an exhausting defense against having to look at ourselves. And it's also a real block to intimacy, which is always based on mutuality. So take a moment to think about a time when you have been giving conditionally. You're giving because you want to get something back, which is you don't want to feel any hurt or pain. You don't want to have to look at yourself. You want people to see you in a particular way. And I think it's very useful to make pros and cons lists with something like this. So what are all the pros you have for overgiving or overly extending yourself? And then what are all the cons of doing that? And you'll see, if you really make an exhaustive list, you'll see that those two lists are probably the same. If anything, what you get out of it may outweigh what you don't get out of it. And you've got to look at that and say, where else can I fill myself up? Where else can I get the kind of validation I need, or the friendships I want and need, without exhausting myself or exhausting my resources, whether it's sleep or gasoline, because you're always taking things to people, or literally spending more money than you have on people. So look at how this becomes a blockade to intimacy, and how you actually are really shutting people out if you are overgiving in this way. Because giving, as our quotation said in the beginning, is a two-way street. The door you open to give is also the door you open to receive. So you could substitute the word love for giving or anything else, that this two-way street happens in a mutual way, a reciprocal way, if you will. So a reminder, if you have any questions as I'm going along, or any comments about how this impacts your life, what you might be struggling with, what you want to fix or change during this holiday season so that you have a better experience with your family or friends, even if it's a statement you want to share with us, feel free to type it in the Q&A box. So giving and receiving in a healthy relationship is mutual. It's a two-way street. It can be reciprocal. So it doesn't mean it's reciprocal in this one-to-one fashion. If I give you a candle, you give me a candle back for Christmas. It's more that if I give you a candle and you receive it and you're grateful for it, and you don't feel like I'm giving to you to get something from you, maybe you don't give me a candle. Maybe you don't give me anything at all in December, but in January, you see some little trinket or thing you think I might like, and you surprise me with it just because you want to, not because you feel obligated to or have to. It's because you really want to. It becomes an affair of the heart, this matter of giving and receiving. And to receive gracefully and gratefully requires that you not be anxious, that you are confident yourself and not looking for confidence from the other person. And remember that giving is the controlling position in any exchange, whether it's of money or friendship or gift giving, especially, and even sexual giving, that is the position of power when you give. It's controlling. And receiving is the more reciprocal, more vulnerable position to be in. It's easy to give a compliment unless you have a lot of shame. It's harder to get a compliment and to really take it in. And notice how many times you might get compliments and you push it away by saying, oh, it was nothing, or it's no big deal, or don't worry about that, as opposed to just quietly managing your anxiety, noticing the anxiety you feel in your body, and just simply saying thank you, and then being quiet. Just thank you without equivocating. Taking in the compliment is a form of receiving, gracefully and gratefully. And see if you can play around with that this holiday season also, where you don't feel like you have to give back immediately. I mean, there's nothing more annoying to anyone. Well, there are probably more annoying things, but it is annoying to give somebody a gift because you saw something and you loved it and you knew that the other person would like it. And then before you know it, they've sent you something also as if they felt obligated or they were in a competition with you about the thing itself. So it diminishes the giving, and it can make the person who gave to that person not want to give to them anymore. So Matt writes, how can I know if I'm overgiving? Often the first point where I realize I was overgiving is after the fact, when I suddenly feel resentful about some unmet and unspoken need that I was aware of. That's great. I'm glad you're bringing up resentment. So I think it's by asking yourself, why am I giving this to this person? Right? Am I giving it out of a place that feels really pure and clean because I don't want anything in return other than taking care of my friend in a joyous way, or I want to celebrate that person, like when it's somebody's birthday, it's a celebration of that person. I want them to have a better day today, and I don't want anything in return. A thank you is always nice, by the way, if you are receiving gifts. The very least we can do is say thank you, but we're not obligated to automatically return a gift, which is what I was talking about previously. So doing a little bit of an assessment before you buy the gift, and going through, even if it's a simple checklist for yourself of, what is the purpose of this gift? Well, it's Jane's birthday. Okay, fair enough. How much do I want to spend on this gift? What is right size for my relationship with Jane? If she's my best friend in the world and we have this world of mutuality with each other and have years of history, fine. But if it's not that, then why am I going out of my way to do this? What kind of favor do I want from her? What am I hoping for? Am I hoping for a response that's reflective of how much money I spent? Or do I want nothing other than Jane to have a nice birthday today? So what is the purpose? Is there an occasion? And how much money do I need to spend? And what feels right sized? So if I don't get any kind of reciprocal gesture, then I'm not going to have a resentment about it. And is there anything else? Do I have any, oh, the word just slipped my mind, but do I have any ulterior motives here? Am I trying to get something here that I should otherwise be getting elsewhere from another person, or going to Jane directly and talking to her about what I want and need from her, which costs nothing other than us being able to stand up for ourselves? Then someone says, I have a hard time receiving gifts or help. How can I be more gracious in receiving? Well, first of all, ask yourself, what is so difficult about receiving? Because receiving, again, is the more vulnerable position. My guess is it's bumping up against shame in you. And shame is such a powerful force in all of us. And it shows up in so many different ways. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me how powerful shame is and how intense it is. Like, the more we were shamed or abused or neglected in childhood, the more alive it is in our day-to-day living in adulthood, and how hard we have to work to unwind it. But when somebody gives you a gift, the practice there is for you to notice your anxiety, or notice if you're blushing, notice that you want to push it away, which, when you think about it, is really kind of rude. Somebody is bringing you something that they thought about, and you're pushing it away as opposed to receiving it, taking it in. So take a breath in that moment and very simply just say thank you. And notice what happens to you, how you want to start chattering or jabbering away or speaking unnecessarily, and don't do it. If you can get through that first time and just don't do it, and then you start to practice receiving by just saying thank you and being quiet, you will build capacity in your nervous system to receive. It won't feel as difficult as time goes on. And then ask yourself, what is coming up for me right now after you've received the gift and after you've said thank you? But maybe do some journaling about it afterwards. Was there shame that was arising for you? Do you feel unworthy? Do you feel like you don't deserve for people to celebrate you, see you, give to you in that way? And if so, where did that come from? And see if you can drill down in your journaling into where this comes from for you, why you push away love, validation, celebration, recognition of yourself. So you don't want to go into a one down position of, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve this, or yes, I'm so fabulous, you should have given me that gift and 10 more, or one that was 10 times more expensive. That's just another way of avoiding the intimacy. So stay with a very quiet, simple thank you and make sure you're breathing. So accepting gifts or kindness means that we're caring for ourselves. We're caring for our own needs. And I think this is really important because I talked about this recently, the difference between self-care and a deep care of the self. And when we accept gifts or acts of kindness from people, we are deeply caring for our own needs, and we're allowing people to help us instead of draining all of our energy into caretaking for others. And when we all have the experience of giving or helping others, and it makes us feel good when we open the door for somebody who's infirmed in some way, whether they are disabled or elderly. We open the door for them, they are grateful, and it's a genuine act of being a good Samaritan. But we also feel good about ourselves, that we're not, angry in traffic or yelling at somebody through our windshield, because we all have those moments too, that we are recognizing our mutual humanity. So when we prevent people from doing that, we're actually robbing them from an experience of their own goodness, their own conscience, their own self-esteem. So instead of constantly giving to other people, take some moments to receive this holiday season. And people that are sexy really privilege their self-care, their care of themselves, not in a self-centered way, but in a way that shows that they take responsibility for themselves. So those people are more confident. They walk through life in a more self-assured way. Ron writes, I've experienced violation of confidentiality from my mother. What emotional processing will help me celebrate her birthday this month? Well, that is a very tricky thing, and that's more about boundaries. So I had this experience myself for a number of years until I really healed my relationship with my father, where it would be Father's Day or his birthday, and I'd have to go buy a card. And all those Hallmark cards were not the cards. They were untrue. It wasn't what I was feeling at that time. So oftentimes I would buy blank cards and write my own message, or find a card that had a very simple message behind it that I agreed with. So do not go overboard with something that's saccharine and doesn't ring true for you. And I really appreciate and respect that you want to make a gesture, but that it's a boundary gesture. So find a card that is reflective of what's true for you and what your boundaries are. And it might be a blank card with a beautiful scene or animal on it, that she would like. And it's a simple message of happy birthday. I hope you have a great new year or something like that. And that's it. And you sign your name to it. If you feel compelled to buy a gift, then again, buy something simple, really simple, inexpensive, something she would like. A candle's always a win-win situation. And at this time of year, you can buy those tiny little holiday scented candles. So that would be my best advice. Now, unless you have, it doesn't sound like it from your note, but there are people that don't speak to parents sometimes for a year or 2 or 3 because they're so toxic. And if you're in a no speaking process right now, then you shouldn't send anything, but you're writing, what emotional processing will help me celebrate her birthday this much? So that makes it sound like you want to celebrate. So this confidentiality violation is really something that she needs to apologize for. You're going to have to bring up the conversation with her at some point if you haven't already. And that might be an ongoing dialogue between the two of you, where you let her know how badly it hurt you, why it wasn't okay, and how it also breached your trust, that you don't trust her now. And because you don't trust her, you're not going to be sharing with her the way that you once did. And she's going to have to deal with that reality because she violated your trust. I don't know that that's the conversation right now for her birthday. So you need to take what I'm saying and use it according to what the context is of what the two of you are dealing with. So I hope that helps. And I really appreciate his conversation, because oftentimes emotional cutoff with a parent or a sibling is necessary because of the level of dysfunction. But as we start to heal ourselves, we start to heal those relationships, even though those people might never do any work on their own. We start to realize where their difficulties are, and we set better boundaries so that we don't get taken advantage of. So think about what those boundaries might be for you this holiday season as you go through making your lists of who you're sending cards to, who you're buying gifts for, who you want to see, who you don't want to see, who you want to see in a limited way, so that what you're giving is right-sized. Maybe just your presence, just showing up at an event is enough giving for some situations. So when we take care of ourselves first, we're taking ownership of what we need, and we're not expecting the other person to validate us, to commend us, to give back to us in an absolutely one-to-one ratio way. We take care of ourselves first by setting these parameters on the front end, and that then we are protecting our own hearts. And once we're balanced, then we can appropriately give to those people around us. So ask yourself, where do I need to create balance this holiday season? Who will I be giving to, and in what capacity? And I think it's useful to actually make lists, whether it's who you're going to send Christmas cards to or e-cards to. E-cards are also great because they're even a step down from an actual card, which you buy and then pay postage on. So even with a card, you're spending $5 on somebody. With an e-card, you're just, whatever your subscription is to the service you're using is what you're using, and everybody gets that. So think about tiers of giving. And then who are the people you want to spend a little bit of money on, a box of candy on, and up from there. And that way you can live with that list for a little while, look it over, check in with your body when you look at the list and say, does this feel right to me, or am I overdoing it here? And also, what if I don't get anything back from any of these people? What if I don't get a card back? What if I don't get a gift back? How am I going to feel about that? And then adjust your list accordingly. And then, of course, when it comes to giving to our beloved, when we talk about giving sexually, that is a more advanced form of giving. When you can practice these giving boundaries when it comes to birthdays and holidays and gifts and cards, then you're more able to give and receive sexually, as funny as that might sound. But giving during sex means that we surrender to the shared energies that emerge between us. We're not controlling the sexual experience through domination or insisting on our partner's pleasure, because that can turn into a wrestling match when parties have not spoken about their desires for giving and receiving and what they like and what they don't like. So you don't want that. You want it to be a shared mutual experience where you're giving freely to each other and you're able to receive also, because receiving is much more difficult in sex than any place, because we're out of control in a receiving position. So consider that also. So requiring our partner's orgasm is a form of force and control. And so many people get hung up on this matter, that if their partner doesn't orgasm, then they didn't have a good time, or they didn't receive pleasure, or it means that I'm not a good lover and it's not about you, which I've said many, many times in these webinars. Forcing your partner into orgasm can be a form of, sexual terrorism in a way, because bodies have moods, bodies are available for orgasm sometimes, sometimes not. So don't force or try to control your partner's sexual experience. Instead, give freely from a place of fluidity, from a place of being open, and experience freely without setting a program, without setting an expectation for what's going to happen. And of course, it's always useful to have a conversation first about this. So be generous in your lovemaking without an agenda. And that allows all of the possibilities of giving and receiving and that fluidity and that ebb and flow to come forward in your lovemaking. And I would also assert that if you make the kind of Christmas list that I'm talking about, and you really take stock of who you're giving to, and you feel good about it across the board, even if you've got, like, I don't know, 20 people on your list, some get cards, some get gifts, you'll find that you will receive much more freely as a result of this unconditional, unsticky kind of giving that you're engaging in. So for today, ask yourself, what does giving mean to me? What does giving mean to me? And ask your partner how sexually generous she or he finds you, and listen from a place of vulnerability and openness. Because you might be surprised to find out that they don't think you're generous, or that you give too much, that you're not really paying attention to their cues. So it's a hard question to ask. It's a difficult question to hear the answer to. But ask your partner, how generous sexually do you find me? And hopefully they are open to hearing the answer to that question also. And if you're interested in giving during sex, also try receiving. Take turns giving and receiving with your lover and talk about what happens afterwards. Maybe sometimes when you have sex, you're just going to do one thing or the other. You're going to take turns just giving or just receiving, and noticing what happens for you so that you can be in a dialogue about that. And then meld those energies also as you go forward in your sexual lovemaking. So I hope you have a beautiful holiday season with this notion of giving and receiving, and that you think about the interplay of giving and receiving gifts, acts of kindness, kind words, and also how that plays out and is mirrored actually in your sex life. Because we can look at your sex life and look at how you give and receive, or we can look at how you give and receive in life, and that will telegraph how you participate in your sex life as well. All right, so here's wishing you all a happy holiday season. May you give freely, may you receive without shame. May you spread this giving and receiving spirit to all those in your life whom you love, and those you don't know, to strangers too, as you go forward this month. All right, I look forward to talking to you soon, and happy holidays.